Samina here, broadcast journalist and TV producer. Welcome to my series, Diversity and Inclusion in TV, Radio and Film, in which industry professionals share with me their experiences, their thoughts and opinions on how to create equal playing ground for everyone who works in this business. For me, as a Pakistani British woman working in this business, it's really important to ensure inclusion and representation of those from underrepresented communities. For details of all the interviews in my series, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, and of course, feel free to follow me across my social media platforms. Now, let me introduce you to my guest today. She's a film publicist and she's promoted some huge films, including The Irishman, Mogul Mowgli, and Deadpool 2. Welcome, Sanam Hassan. How are you, Sanam?
Good, thank you.
So Sanam, tell me, what's your experience been of the world of publicity, publicizing, promoting films and TV?
Well, it's a very interesting world. It's not for the faint of heart, for sure. There's a lot of hard work involved. There's a lot of sort of skills and networking that you have to take into account. But obviously, I love it. I've been in it for over 15 years now. So there's no other kind of field I can see myself moving into at this stage. And it's definitely something worth considering.
And what's it like in terms of diversity? What is that kind of arena like?
Well, there's not, I would say, in the particular field of entertainment publicity, there are not a lot of people like me within these roles, meaning there's not a lot of ethnic minorities, ethnic female minorities. At one stage where I had a great opportunity for a mainstream studio job, handling UK film publicity campaigns, I found that there was a huge sort of wide network of publicists out there where there was not a single person of ethnic minority within it. And I was very much against the norm. And I think that sort of having me within that role was great exposure for them to sort of see somebody different. But it is always very strange when you find yourself in these situations where you are even more of a minority than you realized.
And how did that make you feel? And how is it that you managed to secure a place in this industry where others might not have? Why do you think there is a lack of diversity?
I think it probably comes from two angles. Firstly, maybe perhaps also people with my ethnic background not thinking about
Can you share what your ethnic background is, please?
I'm originally from Pakistan, and just because of the nature of my father's career, I've lived between the UK, the US, and Pakistan my whole life. So I sort of see myself as a citizen of the world. That's actually one of my positionings of myself in my work field, is that I'm a bridge between the East and the West film industries. So I use it sort of as my strength, but at times I probably found myself where I had to sort of maybe work a little bit harder than a non-ethnic counterpart, because maybe it was just taken for granted that she could do the role, where I had to prove myself more. And not just because of my ethnic background, but when you combine that with being married and a mom, then a whole lot of other sort of concerns might arise in other people's mindset.
So you said just earlier there was two aspects to this. So can you just kind of divide out what those two aspects are? Because one, are you referring to perhaps challenges and boundaries within your cultural heritage versus the challenges and boundaries in the mainstream?
That's exactly what I meant. And it's that sort of maybe perhaps, we are very, as an ethnic background, we're very influenced by our parents and where they feel we should end up and what we should be doing. And perhaps they don't see that as a sort of a legitimate job that can sustain you for the rest of your life and, provide for your family and buy you that house and all those kind of things. So they they're maybe I wouldn't really say that that's been happening too much lately, but for previous generations it has happened, and that always trickles down, that mentality.
But you're living proof that it is possible to be successful. So hopefully, you know, the more people that do this, it can break those cultural sort of barriers and the mindsets of parents within, you know, especially from South Asian heritage.
Yes, yeah, and then it's also the other side of it was that being able to access BAME communities and encourage them to apply for these roles. It's sort of you know, HR departments, recruitment companies, sort of challenges they face in sort of thinking of how to access these communities so that they receive applicants from them, enough to put forward to film PR agencies, to film studios, so that there's enough of a flow of diversity.
And how do you think those departments can do that?
I think, you know, with through social media, through LinkedIn, if they can also do a call for applicants, you know, the from diverse backgrounds. The last year with everything that happened with the Black Lives Matter movement, and the things that came out of that movement were, I particularly saw people being more proactive. I've seen posts from recruiters saying we're looking specifically for candidates from BAME backgrounds, or that this role is tailored for a person from this background. I've seen film studios understand that they need to develop representation more within media outlets, so that, you know, that they have a whole kind of media segment covered, but it's not just, you know, mainstream media appealing to a certain type of viewer, but it's also ethnic media as well. So it's kind of just the whole widespread industry. I have noticed an improvement in the last couple of months.
So I hate to sound cynical, but I'm going to sound exactly that now by this question I'm going to ask you. I mean, I've noticed over the last couple of decades, whenever there's something that blows up, where there's protests, you know, whether it's the Me Too movement or the Black Lives Matter movement, there seems to be a reaction from the industries as to, oh, we've got to do this, we've got to get gender equality, we've got to do this, you know, diversity. But has it really been sustained is the question. And is it lip service they're paying? Is it a reactionary thing? Or are they really responding now? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think my thoughts are mixed. I think that compared to previous decades, we now have the mirror of social media to sort of answer to. And the things that happened in the past year were so horrific and so hard to get out of your mind and run away from, and really making people face their privilege in a way that it probably hadn't been done before, and that you couldn't avoid it because of social media.
How do you mean making people face their privilege? That's interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that, you know, the videos that came out and sort of the backlash towards them and the protests that happened in the middle of a pandemic. And so, you know, even if you don't turn on your TV every single day and watch the daily news, you still have, you know, your Facebook and your Instagram and your Twitter and everything that is giving you all of this information. And there was a lot of dialogue and editorials and opinion pieces about privilege and what it means to have white privilege. And I think I've seen, you know, my own colleagues and my own friends sort of question that themselves, because if you're born with privilege, you never question it. You know,
well, yeah, I don't think you know any different. So you don't, you know, because
exactly.
you don't have that empathy for somebody else's struggle because you've never had to experience that, and you probably most likely never will.
And empathy is the key word. So it's just like if you were born wealthy and then you were never exposed to sort of, you know, what it's like to work in a third world country. It's the same thing that, you know, if you've never really walked in someone else's shoes, how can you really truly empathize? But I think that, you know, social media just forced people to do a lot of soul searching within themselves. And where I'm not cynical, I like to try to think that people do want to improve things. They don't want to have things just stay the same and have systemic racism permeate through all aspects of our lives. So of course there's a whole segment that is, you know, neo-Nazi and fascist and everything, that they exist. We know that for a fact. They're out there, it's horrific. But, you know, within the industry, at least that I work in, you know, people want to sort of embrace people from all walks of life, and then now just do it in a more proactive way so that systemic racism can be broken within the industry.
Well, that's really encouraging to hear. I'd just like to talk about and pick up on something you said earlier as somebody from South Asian heritage. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, you could have different kind of heritage. You could be, I don't know, somewhere from Eastern Europe or Brazilian or whatever it is, that you have a certain knowledge that can really, you know, impact positively on your industry for sure, and other industries in terms of storytelling. But in your industry, which we're particularly looking at today, I mean, for example, you know, if you speak other languages, if you can bring the cultural aspect and knowledge of that, and, you know, just share with me what benefits there are to bringing that kind of cultural knowledge, you know, that somebody might have from being from a diverse background.
Well, definitely. I mean, there's sometimes you don't even realize the knowledge that you have because of your diversity until you're asked to sort of work on something that brings it out. And it takes, you know, where I've gotten to really develop my career in particular points in my life is because of like key champions or key holders who have seen that, have had the kind of foresight and the sensitivity to see that because of my diversity, I would really benefit working on a particular campaign. For example, with Mogul Mowgli, my remit was to sort of, you know, really reach the UK Asian media outlets, really engage with that press, help reach the audiences in regional Asian specific locations across the UK. So I thought that was really sort of very clever, skillful, and with a lot of forethought that the client had hired me to really handle that for them. And then similarly, when I was working on a film called No Fathers in Kashmir, my understanding of the conflicts within that region, which are so complex, and so my knowledge is not as in depth as maybe somebody who studied the socio-political regional aspects for decades. But of course, being from that part of the world, I know that there's a lot of sensitivities. I know that it's a hotbed of an issue. I know that there,
you know, if you're from a South Asian heritage, you grow up with that knowledge. You grow up with discussions around that. So, you know, you're pretty well informed about it, generally speaking.
Absolutely, exactly, without even realizing, until you're sort of faced with, okay, promote this film, and then you realize there's going to be like 10 different factions with 50 different opinions, and so you kind of just have to bring the positive message of the film out there so that the community feels united about the film as opposed to more broken apart.
Yeah, and for those at entry level who might be watching, particularly young girls and those from more, you know, diverse backgrounds, what words of encouragement would you give them, particularly if they want to get into your line of business? Like, how can they best showcase themselves? Do they need to perhaps add on their CV, like, I come from this background and this is what I can offer? Maybe the language skills they've got. I mean, just share with us what they could. Just give us some advice around that.
I definitely, to add that on, you know, I mean, if, for example, if you're applying for a role at a film festival or for an agency that might have a film festival as a client, they're going to have films from your part of the world, most likely, if it's an international film festival. So and then you having those strengths and that language, and when I was working on the London Film Festival 2 years ago, and there was a film from India, a great animated film called Bombay Rose. And just, I mean, of course, the film had subtitles, but there's nothing like being able to know the language. So you do see the subtleties and the nuances that the subtitles can translate to really help you sort of promote the film. So definitely add that onto your CV. It should be something that HR people should be paying attention to as well. Yeah, bring your diversity into it. And if your hobby is like Bollywood dancing, say that your hobby is Bollywood dancing. Why not?
Yeah, why not? So I'd just like to expand on what you've been just talking about now. Are you or were you at any point limited because of your heritage by just being given South Asian films to promote rather than getting a more diverse pool of films to promote in the main?
No, well, sorry. Yes, I think that I actually don't find it limiting. And I personally love these films myself. And I feel the need to champion them. And I feel that it's better to have somebody with the understanding and the skill and the knowledge to get behind them. However, that's me personally, and I can understand that if that would be frustrating to somebody else. But it definitely took me working really, really hard on those films and developing relationship with press to break through into the mainstream at a certain point in my career. And like I said, again, it came with, you know, certain champions and key holders helping me along that way. But if you can prove yourself really well in one particular aspect, it can only help in the other. So yeah, so just stick with it.
Yeah, can break the barriers. So now, I mean, just looking to the future, what's your feelings? You know, are you positive? Are you optimistic? Are you not? Share with us what's going on for you right now in terms of your business.
Well, I mean, it's obviously very difficult times. I used to work primarily on theatrical releases. There's no cinemas open during a pandemic. There are no actual live film festivals taking place. So there's a lot of, I would say, one of the hardest hit industries has been the cinema industry. Also with the whole kind of flow of production from that aspect of it. Of course, they are films. They can afford the insurance, or they can manage to keep things really tiny that they have been able to get through with production. But those are very few of them. So there's also going to be a product flow issue once things lift, and a scramble to make things. So it's a little bit of an uncertain time, yeah. but we're all kind of in it together. And if anything, is that the pandemic is kind of like, you know, how people say it's an equalizer. Sometimes that could be a frustrating statement, but in this respect, it actually has been, because it's like the studios are in the same boats as the independents, and you know, somebody who's an entry-level publicist will be the same position as the director of publicity.
Very
Everybody, yeah. So it has kind of equalized things within the industry.
Yeah. Well, Sanam, it's been really interesting to hear your thoughts and opinions on diversity and inclusion in your business. And it's been really interesting to hear you share your story too. So thank you so much for taking time out to speak with me today.
Thank you so much, Samina.
You're welcome. I'd really like to hear from you, whether you're at entry level or whether you're a seasoned professional in TV, radio, and film. What have your experiences been, you know, in terms of diversity and inclusion? I'd really like to hear from you. So please feel free to get in touch and message me. Also, please do continue the conversation on in the comments section, and do leave me your thoughts and opinions on anything that was discussed with Sanam today, or indeed in the general aspect of diversity and inclusion within the media industry. For more details of all my interviews in this series, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and feel free to follow me across my social media platforms. It's been a real pleasure to have your company today, and I look forward to you joining me next time. See you soon.